So this is going to be an eye-opener for you on sharing what Matt is about. So Matt has got the Matt Brown Show, which is probably more popular overseas than it is in our own country.
Yeah.
He's got a phenomenal history. He started 9 businesses. We're going to how he started. I'm going to ask him to share some of that stuff with us. But he's started nice businesses. He's a born entrepreneur. That's what he does. And he's made podcasting real. So he's probably one of the first guys in our country who started on podcasting, who probably understands it the best. I think you've got the highest followers in South Africa on the Matt Brown Show.
Yeah, I don't really know for sure. Probably after Gareth Cliff.
Yeah. After Gareth Cliff, yeah. He doesn't count.
I don't really care about him. Like whatsoever.
Okay, so Matt has got, quite a lot of experience under his belt in terms of running businesses, and also, I know the privilege of having interviewed a lot of people, because I see that in the front of your book, there's a lot of people that speak about your book, and a lot of them we've actually had on the Business Book Club.
Great.
So Madness Brenner, Richard Molland, Gavin, Ian Fur, Gigi Elcock. So, and there's so much that one can learn from those individuals. And you've got the 12 principles, which we'll unpack and just discuss that a bit today. But before we do that, and I'm going to allow you guys to interact with Matt at the stage. I just firstly want to wear him out, make him really tired with all the hard questions, and then when he's really tired, then you guys are coming with the big questions. But Matt, you start off your career in London, right?
Yeah.
And you started it off with, in those days, let's check the age here. Everybody still knows what vinyl records are, right? Okay. So share with us a bit about how that went. How did you start a vinyl record label business?
Yeah. So I basically my entire life I've had essentially 2 passions: business and then music. So I always felt, well, if I could combine the two, well, why not, right? Wouldn't it be great to be a little bit infamous or whatever the case is, being creative and producing music and creating a community around the idea of I suppose the passion of music around the world. So I was 21, I think, and I was basically my entire life unemployable. So I've got a huge problem with authority. I don't have a relationship with my dad for that exact reason, or at least that's what I like to tell myself. I started this record label, and I didn't really know what I was doing. It was just when the internet had sex, and it created the 56K modem. Remember that thing? We used to make all those funny sounds and things. And I remember getting the first AOL compact disc. Do you remember those things? At the time, and shoving it in, and then the moment I connected to the internet for the first time, I suddenly realized, and at the time, by the way, there was only about 20 million internet users. But it changed my entire, point of view on the internet, because suddenly things were essentially disruptable, and I use that word deliberately. And then I don't know how many of you remember a music file sharing service, or just a file sharing service called Napster. How many of you remember that? So Napster came, and that really created the first proof of concept that digital distribution and sharing of digital MP3 files or music files was actually possible, and the world actually wanted that. And that's when I decided to essentially focus on digital downloads and not just records. So at the time, vinyl, when you produced, let's just say you released an album, we released over 100 albums a year. And when you produced, let's just say, a run of 500 records, you used to create an acetate test pressing. And just that one record, which you could only play literally once or twice, he's nodding his head there, it literally cost, £500 just to produce the first recording, the master recording. And then if that sounded good and the EQs were right, then you would go into mass production. And then you're still looking at £2.50 to £5 per record, depending on the volume of your print jobs, when digital download was essentially the cost of your bandwidth. So it made no sense. So I had the great idea at the time. So remixing was cool. You know, MTV basically created a new award for the first time ever called the Best Remix or International Remix Award. And Frankie Knuckles basically won this thing. And so remixing became cool. And what they would do is they would take pop music. They would take like Lady Gaga and make it like house music, you know, or like the electronic dance music that you hear today. And so I created something called the Voodoo Vinyl Remix Network. And basically what I was leveraging was this old idea that if you were a music producer anywhere in the world, that you needed a record label to release your music. And so because of the internet, that entire paradigm changed. It's just that, you know, music artists didn't realize this, but I did. So what I was able to do was get music from any artist anywhere in the world for free. So my cost of acquisition was zero. And it needed to be zero because of the price of a download, which was like $1 to £1. And so any artist would come, give me their music for free. I would own that master recording rights for free. But then what I would do is I'd make the individual sounds of the song available for all of you to download for free. And then you would submit your remixes to us as the label, and we would select the best versions or the best remixes, the ones we thought had the highest commercial viability. And then what we would do is we would release that globally around the world. And we did that for the best part of like 3 to 5 years. And then iTunes came along and everything went digital. Everything went direct to consumer. All the business models changed, got disrupted, and suddenly, you know, I was sitting with a profitable business as a 26-year-old. And that's basically where it started. I don't know whether you want to take it from there.
Yeah, no, but I mean, did you make money like that?
Yeah, we did. We actually realized that you had to do the vinyl and the digital download, because the quality of the sound is still better on a record in a club. So if you're playing at like Trade or, you know, one of the big clubs, it's like you still want the record because it sounds better. So.
Okay, and then you sold that business?
Yeah, I sold that business when I was 26, and then I thought I knew it all.
You know, if you had lots of money in the bank account?
If you tell a 26-year-old that he's Jesus, he'll believe you. And that's exactly what I did. I thought I knew it all. And so then I started my next venture, which was kind of like self-help, motivation, Tony Robbins, that kind of thing. I trained up in like neuro-linguistic programming and hypnotherapy and timeline therapy, and I did what I needed to do to be knowledgeable, more knowledgeable than, let's just say, a 40-year-old man, a typical 40-year-old man. The only thing I didn't realize was that when you're teaching people about life, how many of you want to take advice about life from a 26-year-old? Yeah, you haven't really lived. And so luckily the universe fixed all that for me, and I failed massively. So I lost all my money. Basically, the worst part about I've lost all my money many times. and eventually you get so used to making money, it's like you'll never be broke. But in the end, it took a long time to recognize a lot of that I know today about failure. When I was 26 and the business failed, I mean, I had no mentor, I had no sort of peer network at the time. I was really flying by the seat of my own pants and willpower. And so in the end, what I learned, or what I thought at the time, was that when a business fails, it's actually you that fails. So I took it all personally. And that basically sent me on a very long-winded adventure, that basically spanned 9 more businesses. It's now 10, by the way. I launched another company in Nairobi 4 weeks ago. And so it was a funny thing, because on the day of the book launch, there's lots of detail here, so I'm kind of giving you the end state. But it took 14 years to kind of go full circle to actually being in a position where I'm able to talk to people, ordinary people such as yourselves, about what I've learned in the process of creating wealth, independence, and basically, becoming an influencer and a person of, I suppose, absolute accountability. And it's a funny thing that it took 14 years to do that journey. So it's a culmination. So I'm grateful to be here today.
But Matt, share with us that journey. I mean, you're talking about failure, and everybody talks about failing forward, and you've got to fail. But I mean, it's not. The theory behind failing is simple, but it's the emotions, and how do you actually do it?
Fail.
You fail. you got no money, no more ideas because you're in a bad space. Like how do you get through that? Like why is that so romanticized that we've got to fail to be able to be successful?
Yeah, it's become cliche now. I love going to Google Images, and you go to the images and you just search for quotes, inspiring quotes. How many of you have done that, right? Because I'm not feeling like I'm motivated today, so I want to get some chutzpah in my, after my breakfast and my 4 double espressos. And so you look at that stuff and you go, oh, it's so cliche, but the reality is that they exist for a reason. And so I was once told that quotes only matter to the uninspired, but in the end they're still true. So fail forward, fail often. How many of you have heard that? It's like follow your passion and follow your purpose and all these kind of things. And they're not untrue, but we're very quick to just waft over it because they're like, oh, it's so cliche. So we actually do ourselves a disservice by not recognizing that these things are actually true. And they exist because other people have discovered these truths and they've become famous because, Thomas Edison said, I didn't fail 1,000 times. What did he say? What was that quote? Someone want to finish that for me? I learned 1,000 ways how not to make a light bulb. Okay, great. So is it untrue or is it true? So why don't we see it as true and why don't we act on it? So I would like to pose a counterpoint around knowledge. I think knowledge is useless unless it's used. And so why isn't it used? And let's talk about emotion, right? So when you fail, when I was that 26-year-old idiot, basically, I'm still an idiot in many respects. But when you fail, it creates emotion. And so the thing about emotion is that emotions lie. They're not necessarily true. Like put a label on it, like happiness, fulfillment, joy. These are all emotions, right? But how do you know when that it's lying to you or not? Are you really fulfilled? Do you think you're fulfilled? Do you really know what fulfillment is? Take success. How do you know when you're successful? What does it actually mean to be successful? Is success a destination or is it a journey? We can always, connect the dots there on what's the truth around that one. But especially when you're young, the book, that you're holding there, it's the book, and I talk to kids, high school students all the time, because it's the book that I wish I was given when I was 18. To say, because, at school you're taught get good grades, because otherwise if you get bad grades, it's what? It's bad. You must get an A grade, because if you don't get A grades, you're never going to get accepted to university, and if you don't get accepted to university, you're not going to get a job. That's the narrative, right? That's being spun. And so when you leave school, failure is bad. In my world, knowing what I know today, is that failure is a necessity. And so I don't have a good day unless I failed every single day. It's an absolute necessity. When I interview someone, and if I have 2 people with the same CV, same school, same degree, same everything, I'll look for the person who's failed more. I don't want the person that's successful on the athletics field. I want the person that's broken, because I have a higher propensity to work with that person, because especially in our business being as pressurized as it is, to get the best out of them, because they recognize that being flawed is actually okay. It's not, and again, you think about Instagram, you mentioned like tag at Matt Brown and ZA and whatever. It's that we're living in this cultural paradigm of, fake news, Photoshop photographs, Instagram filters. It's all about the likes, because if 100 of you don't take all photos today, please take photos, by the way, because I'll be an absolute failure if I don't get at least 1 book away. But I have failed today. I know. Thanks so much for that. Appreciate it. And this is the narrative. So what's the role of failure in this broader narrative that dominates the mindsets of our youth? And when you've got 70% of the youth that's unemployed today, that's a frightening number. That's a time bomb just waiting to happen. And so what is the role of failure in that context? And what's the truth about that? And what role do we need to play as a society when we start to engage with the youth dividend? And those are some fundamental questions. So it's less about failure. One of the things I write about is the principle of failure. It's not to be fearless. Another thing, moms and dads. I'm a dad. got two beautiful children. It's like, you know, you can see it in them, like especially my youngster Frank, right? So when he's 5, he's turning 5 in January.
Okay.
But when he makes a small mistake, he freaks out. Totally freaks out. Starts throwing things around, and it's a personality trait, right? So, you know, it's the saying that, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. So when he goes off to school, I don't really know what happens there. 300 days a year, how many days he goes there. So he's learning things from other kids who are learning things from other parents or peer groups. And so when they share these learnings collectively, what's the outtake? And so we're creating a production line of the same. They view these events as the same. So when he gets upset, he throws his shit around. And I understand that he's a kid, he's trying to deal with this idea of like, am I a failure or not? You know, and the emotions that are attached to that. And that's a big thing. I mean, we're all emotional creatures, you know what I'm saying? And so what I try and implore to him to do is to fail often. So what I've done as a small thing is actually, you know, radio control cars, but not like the things you buy at Toy Zone, but these things do like 100 k's an hour. They're very difficult to control and whatever. So I take him racing, but it teaches him how to fail when he crashes the car. It teaches about competition. So I'm teaching him to understand the problem associated with failure. And that is, it's not okay to be fearless. There's no such person in the world that is fearless, right? We're all human. And I love, like even Elon Musk, I did a talk to corporates about this point, and I found a video randomly in this. We actually had him being interviewed by a good interviewer for once. And he was asked about failure, and he said, you seem to be fearless. I mean, you know, SpaceX and Mars, and we all like to like hold Elon up as a poster child of the man who is fearless. Let's build tunnels under the LA, you know, the city to kind of like resolve traffic and what have you. And so, is he fearless or not? Is he fearless or not? But it's easy to go, no, he's fearless, and we must be fearless, right? But actually, he lives with fear every single day. Right? But it's not about being fearless, it's about being fearless. It's about recognizing that when you're trapped by fear, fear will own you. It will absolutely own you. And when I failed in that first business as a 26-year-old, it owned everything that I was. It took all of my potential and it shoved it down, way down there in the dirt, where I had to now, over time and many, many years of self-reflection and more failure and actually coming to terms with myself and my own emotions related to failure, and I had to dig out that potential and hold it up and say, actually, failure is necessary, you know. And it's about also saying that in the context of the emotional story we tell ourselves, it's oftentimes not true, you know, and that's a big one. So what makes the difference between someone who starts a business versus someone who just talks about it for years and years and years? And how many of you know people like that? Whatever it might be. I'd really like to do this, but I'd really like to do that, but, you know, if this, then that. You know, one day when I find the perfect job, one day when the economy turns around, one day when I write my first book, one day. So what's actually stopping you? Well, it's the fear of failure. Totally. So the only way that you then, you know, unlock the capacity to then choose something else for yourself is by recognizing that fear is a normal byproduct of the human psyche, right? But it's about what you do with it. Because I know that, you know, and I've done over 200 podcasts now with billionaires and high impact athletes and whatever. And the difference between, you know, an entrepreneur, you get two types of entrepreneurs essentially. You get one that lets the fear of failure define them. I failed once and therefore I'm never going to start another business again. And versus the other one that lets that fear of failure actually push them forward. You know, and so it's all about this idea of your inner game. And it's got actually nothing to do with what's outside of you. It's about how you interpret the world outside of you that makes all the difference, everything. And so coming back to the book is really, you know, 12 stories, and the most insane stories about humans overcoming the most insane things. Like, I wouldn't want to experience anything that any one of those, you know, stories and those people involved in those stories have experienced, because I don't believe that I would have probably had the character to break through. Again, it's the narrative, right? Yeah. But they did. And so it's the principles associated with this ability of the human potential, as you mentioned earlier, to overcome certain things that are that's happening outside of you. but it's all about this idea of the inner game, because that's the difference. That's the difference. It's the ability. It's like I described the book. I was asked on 702 by Aubrey Masango the other day. I said, "What's this book about?" And I said, "It's a human book for an exponential time." Because everyone's talking about artificial intelligence, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, machine learning, robotics, robotic process automation, outside. So if you're an 18-year-old, you're a 21-year-old, or if you're a 35-year-old career junkie, right? Or whether you're an entrepreneur, when the world starts to accelerate exponentially, there's no rule book for that stuff. There's no rule book. So then what's it about? How do you ensure that if you're an 18-year-old kid, how do you ensure that regardless of what you've learned at school, you can remain relevant? And it's all about the idea of your inner game, having an operating system of your mind that is adaptable, agile, and relevant, because that's the only thing. I mean, the world will only speed up. It's not going to slow down. And so the idea is how you interpret these data points and these signals with a new operating system, ordinary principles that will empower you to remain relevant, not just today, but in the future.
Cool. Matt, but I want to stick to the fear thing for a little while, and then I want to talk about some of those interesting people and the principles in their stories. And one story there that I saw right in the beginning is Joey Evans, and he's got some amazing stories. So we'll talk about him. But before that, is when you get practical about fear. I really want to get practical. And one of your stories, you speak about, and this is quite fascinating. So Matt goes out and he says, I can't remember after how many failures this was, but he wants to now go and work on the super yachts. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have been on a super yacht. I haven't, but I've seen pictures. These are massive yachts. They are for the super rich. They are for the billionaires of this world. So it's a very elite, very niche. Everybody wants to go and work on these yachts. You can imagine, because you get paid a lot of tax-free money, and you connect with a lot of interesting people. So Matt goes and he says he wants to work on it, but he's just the same guy like everybody else. But you did something very interesting, and it seems like there's a bit of a trait of what you do and how you fail and how you wake up from fail. Do you want to talk to us about that, about how you started to write that blog and
yeah. Okay, so super yachts are basically floating palaces. They've got cinemas, music studios. They have full-time professional crew, it's Roman Abramovich, you know what I'm saying? Like, some of them have got submarines, helicopter pads, jacuzzis, multiple decks, and they run up to, I think the most expensive one is literally $1 billion. And so to get onto these yachts, you really are playing in the playground of billionaires. You go to the Exumas in the Bahamas, all over the Caribbean. These yachts go anywhere in the world. And they can access certain parts of, like the Bahamas, for example, that truly are reserved for only those guys with yachts. So you can only get there, and the things are like, totally uninhabited and whatever. So needless to say, you get tax-free money. So if you're unsure about what you want to do with your life, and that's exactly where I was, very confused, and this massive failure thing, and I just wanted to get out of London and just go and travel, right? So and so I don't even remember who or how I got onto the thing, but anyway, so I discovered this world of super yachts. But what I didn't realize is actually how competitive it is to actually get onto these floating palaces. And so I started a blog aptly named Matt Brown Blog. It was amazing. I just started writing about my experiences. And so the hunger and the curiosity to figure out, well, where is the gap actually? And when you've got, it's crazy if you think we've got employment issues here. If you take this as an example and you go to Antibes in France, in the French Riviera, on the first day of the opening season, you've got literally a kilometer of crew waiting to being interviewed by one recruitment agency. It's insane. It's impossible really to get jobs. And even if you have the best qualifications, you still need experience. Because, if tie a bowline knot, or like literally, work a drive on the aft deck of a yacht, dock the thing. Do you understand the experience of docking a $500 million vessel? with 16 people all on radios. It's the kind of thing that you know, once you get into the industry, then you're in. And so the curiosity to figure it all out, I just started writing and writing and writing and writing. And then I started to attract a community because people were also searching how to get a job, how to get a job, how to get a job. And so very quickly, which seemed literally within 3 months, I can't remember the exact numbers, I write it in my book, but I think it was within 3 months at about 10,000 uniques a month, and then it started to get big and snowball from there because there was no information. So the gap was actually information. And so after writing and writing and writing, I started to get picked up by local media. The Doc Crew magazine was one, and they started to publish all my articles and things like this. And so the personal brand in the end, and the network that I started to unlock, which actually, by the way, isn't too dissimilar in terms of the principles for the Matt Brown Show, but the network that I unlocked actually unlocked the opportunity. But once I got in, then it was a case of just, well, you know, you're living the dream, right? So you're hanging out with supermodels and you're seeing things you should never write about. It's legitimately insane what you see on those yachts. But yeah, I mean, across the Atlantic, and eventually I got offered a job in America, and I was being flown around in helicopters to interview captains and stuff like this. But it all happened literally within 6 to 9 months. And it was all because of this idea of, you know, the distribution of information on the internet. It was suddenly possible. It wasn't, you know, it was just the timing. It was about recognizing that, you know, the internet changed everything.
But there's a principle in that which I think could be applied to any business. So if you don't know how to break into a business, just do something. You know, whether your thing is to write or to speak to people, but it's literally, if you want to do, you know, it's always possible because you've done it, and it's just a question of doing something instead of just sitting and wondering, like, how do you get into that? And that applies to a lot of us in a lot of aspects of our lives, you know, wanting to move on to a different level. You've got to do something to get there. You can't just be stagnant about it.
Yeah, I hate being comfortable. I don't, you know, if you accept the status quo today, you're an idiot. You know what I'm saying? I love people that tell me that it can't be done. Like if I had $1 for every time someone wrote me off or told me I wouldn't be able to do something, you know, that's too hard a problem to solve, or the market's not ready to pay for that, or whatever the case is, then I wouldn't be here, you know. And so it was the same thing with the super yachts. It was the same thing with podcasting. There's no South African listenership, really, is there? Not today, but certainly in 4 years' time there's going to be. There's a massive market, by the way, in America, you know, and no one's podcasting. So, you know, you have to rethink everything about every industry, and also your own perceptions of a problem that a specific industry has, because in the end your perceptions are also not true, you know. So one of the things that and again, it's this very simple thing. It's like, one, yes, you need to produce, but what do you need to produce? Do you really understand the problem? So what we do is we interview 100 prospective customers when we're launching for this new business. We interviewed 100 different partners for Microsoft, right? Talking to them about their perceptions of the problem. And in the end, you find the truth. And too few of us actually do enough digging to figure out, well, what is the truth about a specific problem? So like, if you're overweight, what's the truth? Are you standing in front of the mirror going, oh yeah, you know, maybe I should lose a couple, but when you need to actually fundamentally change your fucking life, you know, because if you don't, you're going to die, and it's unhealthy and it's stiff. So it's like it's like we call it the accountability mirror. It's like you stand up in front of a mirror. When you see a mirror, you hold yourself accountable to the struggle that you're going to choose to solve. And that's a big point, right? It's about, I talk to kids about this idea of, you know, you're taught to subscribe to the idea of the dream. You know, when you have X, then you'll be Y. You know, when you have $1 million in the bank, then you'll be happy. When you have the Ferrari 458 Spider, which I know he definitely wants, you know, then you'll be cool enough to ask that girl out on a date, or whatever the case is. You know. And so whatever you decide to do in your life, whether you're an entrepreneur, or as you are and I am, or whether you're a corporate junkie, or whether you're working for an NGO, or whether you're married, problems, you know, single, problems. You want kids, problems. If you want money, problems. Broke, more problems. And so life is one big problem, and then you die. And so the trick is actually to recognize, well, what's the problem that you can see yourself falling in love with over and over and over again, because that's the secret. So, you know, like, what's success? Well, is it the Ferrari 458 Spider? Like, I've bought sports cars, I've made money, I've lost money. Like, in the end, it doesn't matter. Money is just a byproduct of something bigger. And so, what is it actually about? So, it's not about the destination. It's not about the accumulation of material things. It's not about owning the yachts, because I can promise you, you know, some of those ex were bloody miserable. It was frightening, as you got everything in the world, and yet you suck. You're cheating on your wife, you know, you're bringing on Russian whores and things like this on your boat, because you're not fulfilled by something. You're missing something. And so this is the truth, you know. And so, but for ordinary folk like us, right, you aren't in the top 0.001%, okay, it's about, well, when I get there, you know, then it's cool. Then I would have made it, you know. When I'm a published author, oh, by the way, if you want to write a book, problem. Massive problem. And so it's not about the destination, it's about finding fulfillment in the problem that you want to solve every single day. And it's a big shift, you know, in doctrine, because it's always about the champagne and the chocolates and the caviar, right? Because fucking hell, who wants a problem, right? It's like, do you like surprises? You only like the surprises you want, because otherwise they're called problems, right? And so when you're comfortable with the idea of struggle, like, life will only ever be one big struggle. I can see some elderly retired folk. Are you retired? Are you retired? No? Okay, well, don't ever retire, because that's another problem. You know, it's like, when I retire, there'll be the golden years. You know, we'll sit back and we'll drink wine. What the hell is that? Congratulations, you just put your foot down on the accelerator to your fucking end. You know, and so what is it about? It's like, there is no end. There is no end to the struggle. There is only the struggle. You want to do CrossFit, struggle. You want to do no exercise, struggle. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so you have to choose, though. But the problem is, I suppose one of the big problems is we don't want to deal with the psychodrama. You know, I mentioned my dad earlier. Like, so one of my things is, well, do I just, you know, am I just going to, like, be cool with the fact that I'm not speaking terms with him? You know what I mean? Like, he was a hard guy. I mean, you know, he came from a specific generation. You know, he gave me some scars and shit, but he also made me who I am. It wasn't all that bad. You know what I mean? I'm not a pussy, you know? And also, like, you know, a lot of kids today are being risen to not deal with the hard stuff, you know? They're not taught to deal with the struggle. They're taught to deal, and they're rewarded for the achievement, but not the effort. And this is the system that our kids are inheriting, and it's sad. But going back to my dad, it's like, am I prepared to deal with the psychodrama or not? Because here's what's going to happen. I'm moving to America in less than a year to open up another office. And let's just say I'm there for 10 years, right? And I don't see him. He dies. What's going to happen? I'm going to cast my mind back, and instantly I can tell you, hand on heart, that I'm going to regret not dealing with the psychodrama. I'll always wonder, what if? You know, he's got grandkids he's never seen. You understand? And so when you recognize that that is actually something that's stealing from you, it's not empowering you, then you become self-aware. And becoming self-aware unlocks bandwidth or consciousness or whatever other words people use for the thing. But in the end, you actually recognize that the only thing that stops you from being truly fulfilled is the story you keep telling yourself about why you can't have it. He was an arsehole, he was this, he was that, he did things to me that he should never have done, blah, blah, blah. She this, she that, blah, blah. And we all have, how many of you can relate to what I'm saying here?
Bag of stories.
Yeah, bag of stories, a bag of hurt. And we don't want to unlock the hurt because, you know what, life's too short to deal with that shit. Well, guess what? If you don't deal with that shit, that's shit right there. That psychodrama is the same fucking stuff that's fucking you up today and tomorrow and for the rest of your life. And so who wins in the end? Like, you know, and it's a thing, I actually need to go and see him. I've decided I must just actually do it now. But you know, it's a process, of course. I'm not He-Man. But in the end, like, I've decided, and that's the point. You know, decisions are your ultimate power. It's like when you decide something, everything else doesn't matter. I decide I'm going to start a business. I decide I'm going to start a podcast. I decide I'm going to write a book. I decide I'm going to leave that abusive relationship. I decide I'm going to, you know, make amends with my dad. I'm going to decide I'm going to make amends with all these people that I've harmed. And when you decide, the how doesn't matter. It'll just happen. Yeah. It's the funny thing about the universe. But it's about empowering yourself and recognizing that it's the story, and being deeply, truthfully, ruthlessly honest with yourself about what you're about and the experiences that you've had, and to what extent have they defined you, and to what extent are you allowing those experiences to dictate the future of your life. And so it's a small thing, and it's a process. But it's about, these things come up every single day. I mean, business people do shit they shouldn't do. They shouldn't do things. Humans are fallible. I don't really like humans. I like hanging out with humans. I like and trust. You know what I'm saying? But it really is about dealing with the psychodrama in order to unlock your future. And the thing is, when you're older, thanks, Chris. When you're older, it becomes harder because you don't have the energy anymore. You don't have the hunger for it, And so I often get asked by, journalists, like, what's the difference between someone that builds a big business or, a small business, like one hair salon? Okay, Ian Furr, you mentioned earlier. So Ian, right? So sorbet man, etc. So one nail salon, okay, or 600. What's the difference? Big business, lots of money, or I'm okay just to deal with, the one. I don't want to manage people. I don't want this. I don't want the hassle of this. I don't want this. I don't want this. And there's a bazillion excuses why. And then the thing is, then the economy turns and people don't want nail shit anymore. It becomes too competitive. And then they go bankrupt and they go, yeah, well, and they point to everything outside of themselves, right, about why they didn't go from 1 to 2. Because you know what, if they had 2, or maybe if they had 10, it would have been a little bit easier to weather the storm, right? But they never bother to ask why. They don't go, well, why don't I want that thing? Why don't I want the 600 store sorbet? Why am I comfortable with just the one? Like, why don't I want to push myself? Yeah, and I'm not saying that, the 600 is better than the one. I'm just saying if you want the one, that's good, but know why. And because this is the thing. It's like, do you really want to achieve your dreams, or are you going to settle for the mediocre? And, you always get what you settle for.
Matt, before we open up to the audience, I mean, you talk here, on that subject, you talk in the book about growth versus scale, as one of your principles. So relate to me that story about, the 1 and the 600. How does growth and scale fit into that?
Yeah, so it goes back to why, right? So Simon Sinek wrote this, know your why. Why do you do the thing? So he took the idea of like brand ambition and brand, mission and all this stuff, and he bastardized it into a simple thing. Essentially, he took the same thing and regurgitated it in a new way. And good for him. He's done really well with that. And again, people are also cliche. Know why you do stuff. How many of you have heard that? But actually, how many of you really know why? And so growth versus scale. So we're a growth business on a scale trajectory. So I've built okay businesses, right, that are very profitable. I've also built big businesses that are not that profitable. And so what's the difference? Why do I want a growth business, a smaller business versus a really big one? Why am I going to America to open up a bigger business, right? It's stupid. Because I'll tell you why it's stupid. The cost to run a dollar-based business funded by a rand-based business makes no fucking sense. Okay? You will kill your goose that laid the golden egg if you screw this up. And business, I don't really know what I'm doing. Okay, I really don't. And anyone who says they know what they're doing is lying to you. I went to my mentor, who's a billionaire, and I said to him, hey man, I could really like your advice. I've got my green card for America, what do I do? Tell me, help me. You clearly know what you're doing, right? You've got way more zeros in your bank account than me. And he goes, he said to me, well, do you think I know what I'm doing? I was like, yeah, of course. Obviously, you've got you're this guy. He goes, well, I don't know what I'm doing. And if you think I know what I'm doing, you think you need to go and speak to someone else. And this is a man who's, got everything that I don't have, sort of thing, And so, in the end, what's it really about? And it's a question I'm going to stop there because I want you guys to ask me what you think.
Cool. Let's open up the floor. Any questions?
Who's your mentor?
Well, do you want his phone number? Well, it's a thing you're not supposed to really say. Yeah. No, I know. No, but it's like I also was curious about his mentor, who's a dollar-based billionaire. You know, so he owns most of the residential property in Amsterdam. So yeah.
Okay. Another question. Yes. Well.
You mentioned Simon Sinek back in the previous days of last night. How do you sustain that interest? At the end of the day, you're a brand. So how do you sustain the brand interest in terms of
How do you sustain a brand interest in terms of you?
Yeah, so I kind of stopped there because I wanted to see where some of the questions would go outside of the who's my mentor story. But you know, going back to the why thing, it's like, how do you know what motivates you and why do you want the thing that you want? So the way that you get to the truth, there's two ways about figuring out your why. The first one is, let's talk about the book one. So basically, what book are you writing in 12 months' time, and what's the title of the book? That's a good one, because I love constraints. Because when you if you're constrained in your thinking, you have to be creative. You have to be. And then the second one is to talk about your death. So that's another one. Like, who wants to talk about their death today? Right? No one. We don't want to, because it's a thing we, again, fearful of. And so the other thing I write about in my book is, what are you actually fearful of in the context of your death? Are you fearful of dying? Or are you fearful of the known coming to an end? So it's the nuance again in the question. So I interviewed Robin Wheeler. You should get him on here. He wrote a funny book called Death is the Ultimate Orgasm. And so he writes extensively about death, because when you're born, your death is intimately entwined in that event. And so we spend our entire lives living in fear of not dying. You know, we must eat healthy. We must do all these things to maintain our health, because in the end, if we don't have our health, we've got nothing. But in the end, what you should actually be thinking about is, well, if I die today, and it's the day of my funeral, what do I want people to say about me? Was he an author? Did he, you know, was he, you know, Jacques that founded, you know, this business book club, and he got 6,000 books, and he, you know, he fundamentally changed or gave kids from underprivileged background access to knowledge capital that they would never historically have had before. That's pretty cool. Or do you want to be a billionaire, right, who helped no one? You know, and so if you think about it, it's like, well, if you want to change what you're all about today, if you want to make new decisions or have the capacity to make new decisions today, you have to think about the end. But we don't. It's the other way around. We think about today, and we don't worry about the end until we get diagnosed with cancer and or a fucking car crash. Who knows when we're going to go? It can happen at any given point. You know. So that's the first thing, and then the second thing is, you know, who did you become when you were alive? There's a slide I have in my talk where I show the number of weeks in a 90-year human life. If you take a half a carat diamond, okay, it's a small thing like this. A 90-year human life, a tablespoon, right, would hold 90 half a carat diamonds. That's a tablespoon. That's all the time that we have. You know, but we spend most of our time worried about the shit that we think will happen, but in the end never really does. And so then that becomes the narrative that dominates our lives. And so we don't become, we just stay the same. That's the thing that I fear seriously, like above all else, is just being comfortable. I hate being comfortable. I know if I feel comfortable, I need to change something, because otherwise if I don't, I'm going to lose the stuff that I have. You know, and it's just going back to, you know, all these people I've interviewed, it's like none of them view themselves as successful. Not a single one. Not one. And these are like incredible people. Are you successful? No. Why not? Because I'm hungry. And that's the difference between a small business and a scale business. It's the hunger to, fall in love with the brand over and over again. It's the hunger to overcome the struggle. It's the hunger and the thirst for knowledge. It's, Sia Khaleesi, right? So, you saw that stuff on Facebook about his past, right? Like, didn't have money for shoes, very poor background, etc. So he could have quite easily gone and, and he actually says in one of the videos, he could have quite easily gone and robbed houses and become that guy. But he chose not to. He was hungry to play for the Springboks. And so now he did. And so he's done a great job at that. So the trick is actually not to get complacent in what we feel is enough. What is enough? And have you truly lived? And so if you think about the day of your death, who are you becoming? So it's like another one. The day the book went to #1 on Amazon, people messaging on Facebook, you must be so happy, success, all this stuff. And I was like, and I hate that. I hate that kind of acknowledgement. And then the next day, I went to bed, and the next day I woke up and I was depressed. Literally depressed. I was like, and I didn't understand why, and I'm the kind of guy who feels something today and I need 48 hours to figure it out, but it could be like really, really depressive, and I need to figure out why. And in the end, what it came down to was finally being and achieving something, right, that I should now be comfortable, right? Oh, hey man, you're a #1 best-selling author on Amazon in 3 categories. No South African author's ever done something like that. I should be, floating on cloud 9 for like the rest of my life, right? And in the end, I was depressed because I had to re-ask myself the big questions. Why? What now? If I've achieved something, why do I do and choose to do the next thing? So I'm already thinking about the second book, and who knows where it'll go from there. But most people would just be comfortable, because they earn $1 million a year. Hey man, I'm sweet. I'm going to collect my pension. Well, good luck to you. When you're 65, a lot of shit's going to go down there, and you probably ain't going to, have that champagne and chocolates lifestyle and that golden era that you thought that you were going to get, from all your hard labor every day and every week and every month and every year. And so going back to the death thing, it's all about becoming something more than you were the day before. And I've got it on my tattoo here. It says, like, trust the wait, embrace the uncertainty, enjoy the beauty of becoming, because when nothing is certain, anything is possible. I hate certainty. Certainty equals boredom. It equals, behaviors and habitual patterns that you fundamentally, that don't fundamentally serve you. It's about the uncertainty. It's about the risk. It's about the appetite to learn more. Why do you want knowledge capital? Well, it's to do stuff, And so that's the role of this idea of why, and recognizing that you've only got such a short period of time in your life to do something about it.
Cool.
I do have a question.
Yes.
I just want to find out from you, because from my experience, I've had businesses and lots of them, and all of them fail at the same time. And my perspective now, I felt that I shouldn't start too many at the same time. They fail. So now you've shared that you've got 10 businesses. So the question I'm asking from you, failure is something that I've grown to actually love, because you learn a lot, you grow as an individual, you fearless. But the question I want to find out, there has to be a business model that you are using that makes all 10 businesses to be sustainable.
Okay.
How are you structured?
Yeah. So for factually, it's not 10 existing businesses. Yeah, many of those died. Okay, and they deserve to die. Yeah, I failed a lot. But I'm in that situation now. Again, it's the scale. Scale is hard. The big things are really hard. But if you can do the big things, the impossible things, the things that people say that you can't and will never do, that's the exciting part, right? Is doing this to all of them. But what you need is a management team, a structure. So, the idea is also I used to battle with this idea of control. It's like when you create something in the world that the world resonates with and feels that there's value there, you want to control it, right? So when the day that I got told about the green card for America, I was actually not, woo, moving to America. And I wasn't like that because I have a baby here, and it's called Digital Kung Fu. In fact, now I've got two. It's got a sister. And so it's heartbreaking to leave something that you put your heart, walk away from your business. Do it.
Yeah.
No, you're never going to do that. It's hard. But I'm in the situation where I'm being forced to leave. Do you know what I mean? It's another thing about life. You get two types of events, the ones you can control and the ones that you don't. The ones that you can control, like a business failure, that's okay. But when something's ripped from you, when something is stolen from you, when something fails because it had nothing to do with you and everything to do with something else that was beyond your control, that's the shit that you wrestle with. That's the stuff that, you literally go to bed with and wake up with cold sweats at 3 in the morning, been there. And so the secret, though, is to recognize that, is it really just for today? I'm 40 years old. Life's only getting started, It took me 40 years to figure some stuff out, and there's lots of stuff I don't know. One of those things that I've learned recently is to just relinquish control. Because, and there's another cliche, maybe it's not so cliche and well known, but there's a quote that goes like this: when you plant seeds to trees that you'll never sit under and enjoy the shade of, then you know the secret of life. And I kept saying that to myself over and over and over again. And then I was like, well, actually, I've got 25 families currently that I support, and that's in 12 months. Next year it'll be 50, and the year, that's just my direct employees. So now we give away a share scheme, so 10% of the company profits is shared amongst the lieutenants in the army. And so now suddenly it's actually not about me. It's actually about something bigger than myself. It's actually about contribution. And so I'm going to America, actually not going to replicate what we've created here, because I don't know if that'll work, and I don't want to kill the golden goose, right? But now it's about people and excos and external boards, people that have more knowledge capital than me and can literally see this thing grow. I give away equity, so what? People say to me, like Marnus and many, many others, Vinnie Lingham, Dawn Nathan Jones, equity financing is the most expensive form of financing for your business. That's not untrue. Going back to the scale thing, do you want a venture capital backer? I don't. Because now you're an employee again, like this, and now you've got a board to report to and they want 10 times their money back. That's pressure I don't want. So what I prefer to do is, going back to the plant the seeds for shade that trees you'll never enjoy the shade of. It's about, this will be a business that I hope will be around in 10 years' time. There will be 500 people that in my own small, insignificant way would have actually solved this big problem of youth unemployment, where people can learn and actually start to figure out, so this is what it takes to run a business. This is the culture. We've got a very family-orientated culture. It's like ruthless transparency. If I think you're a douchebag, people will say that you're a douchebag, And so we empower people to speak their minds. And these are skills that no school, no textbook's going to teach you. It's just life. And so I'm actually now, to answer your question succinctly, I'm actually okay with putting these structures in and letting it go. Because if I don't let it go, if I let the narrative of I must control this thing because without me it will die, it's very easy to feel that way. But the actual narrative is I need to let it go so it can get bigger without me, because I'm not a farmer, I'm a hunter. So I'll see gaps in markets and I'll go after those things. So when I go to America, I'll start another company, and if that fails, I'll start another one. I'll start another one. I'll start. I hate running companies. I love starting them. So maybe I'll start an incubator. I don't know. But it's about understanding your why, what lights you up, and what truly motivates you. Is it about seeing what things, seeing things happen that were never supposed to happen? Or is it about, trying to retain control of something that, quite frankly, isn't about you? It's bigger than you.
Is the Matt Brown show still there?
Yeah.
That doesn't matter where you are, so you'll just have different people that you'll be interviewing.
Well, I'm excited about that because I've kind of run out of talent here. Like, seriously, in America, it's access to, it's an incredible resource pool, and everyone's accessible. Because when you're 6 hours, 9 hours time difference, and you're some young kid sitting in Joburg versus sitting in Austin, Texas, it's a very different narrative. So I'm hoping it'll get bigger.
Mine is a simple question, and it speaks into the end of what you were saying now. Well, I think it speaks into the end of that. Why did you write the book? Why did you decide, okay, let me put this together?
I was bullied into it. Yeah, bitch. But like,
Publisher is Tracy McDonald. I mean,
Yeah.
guys.
yeah, she's a pit bull, that one. No, but seriously, I was asked 3 different times over the course of maybe 2 years to write a book, and I was scared. Actually, that's why I didn't see myself as an author. It wasn't my narrative. And then I penned the deal because I did this series of events called Secrets of Scale, and I had everybody on there, and it was just like really rad. And there was so much information then, and Nadine Todd, the editor of Entrepreneur Mag, came to me and said, Matt, there's too much to write about here. And I was like, well, then maybe I should write a book. And that's where it started. It just happened. And so then I penned the deal. 9 months later, Tracy phones me. She goes, where's the book? And I hadn't written a single word. So that entire 9-month period, I was trying to figure out, well, what is my why here? What impact do I want to make? Is the book about Matt Brown, the failed entrepreneur, or the flawed human being? Or is this actually about a bigger idea? And what is this idea that can truly make a difference? So the book is, even though I'm in the book and I wrote the thing, it's not about me. It's about you. And it's about, the human potential and the ability to change whatever is in front of you. There's nothing, and again, cliche, nothing you can't achieve if you don't fucking believe it. And so that's where it started. And it took time to find my voice and to get over this. Writing about your own story is harder than writing about something someone else said. But I didn't want it to be that book. I wanted it to be from inside me, not from an external place, because nobody wants to read about that stuff. They want to read about the truth about who you are, because they find themselves and they reflect themselves in the stories that they read in this book. They see themselves in the story of, a young, talented black rugby player who was so good, in fact, he got a scholarship to the Blue Bulls. And, livingthedream.com, Sia Khaleesi. And unfortunately, his, students that were at the school with him got jealous. And one day he left the field and they took an instrument of some kind, hit him over the head, doused him with petrol and set him on fire. And he woke up on fire. And his entire life was stolen from him, in theory, right? From people, and essentially a situation that wasn't his fault. He was doing all the right things. And so the book reveals, how he overcame that. Another girl, Courtney, was, sitting in the lounge of her father's small holding. And they had lions on the small holding in Zimbabwe. And somehow the lions got out of the pen, saw the kid inside the house. One of the lionesses jumped into the house, grabbed the child, who's like, literally 10, by the head, dragged her into the pen, and seriously mauled her and disfigured her. And thankfully, one of the gardeners, somehow white knuckle courage, I don't know what you call it, jumped into the pen with these lions, grabbed this young girl, Courtney, put her onto a helicopter and took her off to the hospital. And it's all about, you think about identity being the most powerful force in the world. It's like compounded interest. Then, when your identity is fundamentally changed forever, then what do you do about it? What's your inner game? Joey Evans told he'd never walk again. Gigi Alcock, in prison for a murder he never committed. That's a frightening story. How many of you read that one? It's not about me. It's actually about you. And that's the idea. So it's really about, empowering people through storytelling, because it's a proven thing. Even Digital Kung Fu has built an entire proposition around storytelling for technology. And so you see yourself in that, and when you see yourself in that, you start to ask better questions. And I don't think that, we give enough credit to how questions govern our lives. So what are my unique gifts? What are my unique talents? What actions should I take? Who should I take these actions with? They're not conscious things when you're driving in traffic, but they're certainly governing your life, right? And so if you don't ask the right questions, another cliche, you don't get what? The right answers, And so it is all about we're made the same. We can all do whatever we want. Like, I love the analogy of there's no difference between Elon Musk and a young black kid in Soweto with a dream. There is no difference. But it's all about the inner game and how that young kid is going to interpret the world around him and execute.
Got time for one more question, two more questions. I've got Vicky there at the back. Vicky?
Thanks, Matt. You still on the dieting book. It sounds really inspiring. But I want to ask the question, prior to your starting to fail at entrepreneurship, before you started going inside out, what kind of gardening and what kind of ingredients did you have? Can you see any ingredients that you had as a kid that would allow you to be robust as you are now?
Yeah, well, the obvious one is completely flawed. That would be the one. Yeah. I think, I was a useless piece of shit. And when I was that, useless. No North Star, drank, drugs, alcohol, whatever it required to make me feel like I was worthy of something. And so, it takes time, and I hated religion, I hated peer pressure. I got expelled from Wynberg Boys, and Wynberg Boys is like the school you don't get expelled from, at all. But I was that guy, thanks very much. I told one of my teachers that he was a prick and told him to kiss my ass. And that, of course, I was a rebel without a cause, complete failure, and surprisingly, people thought I'd literally wind up in jails, institutions, or death. And I was totally that guy. So do I see myself as that same guy? No, not exactly, but certainly, fundamentally, I'm recognizing that I'm so imperfect that it's frightening. It still amazes me that people actually give a shit about what I just said tonight, But you figure that stuff out. And one of the things I write about is about this idea of character. It's like we all have sob stories. We all got 101,000 million reasons why not to do something. Why we should just stay the same and not rock the boat and just listen to what dad says or listen to what mom says or what the world thinks I should be and do with my life. It's all about changing that narrative and finding the character, because for me it's like, regardless of how bad it is, if you've lost your character, you've lost everything. Truly, then there's nothing left, and then most people will commit suicide at that point. But if you find character, like Courtney as an example, she had the character to overcome this identity crisis that was forced upon her. So I don't have the secret. I don't. I can only tell you what I've learned, and in the end, it's about your inner game, right? And your operating system of your mind, and what you are going to choose to do with that. And your mentor, yes. No pressure.
Just to double up on your question, sorry if you don't mind. So, from what you said, what made the change for you? What was it that eureka moment that you like, well, I don't want to be that person anymore, I want to be something different?
Pain. Yeah. I thought that I was always trying to resist the struggle. And I always thought that it was, why am I unhappy? Why am I not fulfilled? Like they say, comparison is the thief of joy. Well, it's absolutely fucking true. Why was I comparing myself to all these other successful quote-unquote people, when in the end I should only be comparing myself to me? Because in the end the race is long and it's only a race with yourself. No one else matters. And so it's experience. Like I believe experience is the best teacher you'll ever have. And having mentors and having honest conversations with people. And I think probably the most influential thing though was podcasting and being curious. I should have stopped podcasting after 2 weeks. A very bad idea. It takes time. I don't have time. I'm a busy guy. But it's the podcasting and having ordinary conversations, and that's why I commend Jacques for what you're doing. and being curious about knowing more and figuring out, well, how do you have that fast car? How do you have all this money? How do you have this success? How are you a #1 Amazon best-selling author? How are you just happy? You know, how do you find true happiness? You know, and so it was. And people say to me, but why did you choose podcasting over like all the different things you could have done? I didn't choose it; it chose me. I just fell in love with it. And so, and this is, and the podcast, just by having ordinary conversations with people, is what transformed me the most. Because suddenly, when Marnus Britrake, I remember the day that I interviewed him, you see people on TV and you think they're like a certain way, you know, and you create this idea, this perception of an issue or a problem or an opportunity that, quite frankly, is not real. And so, and then I interviewed Vinny Ling, and I was like, fuck, he's just some random dude who doesn't really know that much. Then there's Marnus, and then there's this guy, and then there's this billionaire, and then there's this one. And then just by putting a microphone in front of someone's face, suddenly everything becomes super honest and accountable. And so then they're telling me stories, and the stories are in this book, and obviously there's more. But the stories is what transformed me. It's about, geez, how did you, Gigi, man, that guy, he was successful, he lost everything, you know, I mean, really, and he had all hope taken from him. Like a man or woman with no hope truly has nothing, and he was that guy. And how did he find that thing? I mean, it's a better question to ask him. But it's hearing stories like that and going, shit, I'm like that guy, you know, I'm like Elon Musk. There is no difference. And so it's this. It's about finding that new paradigm of authenticity that you can find, that you can execute a new narrative on. You know.
Cool. Maybe just a comment. I am actually motivated by staying in Midrand. I often at Samaran, and there's an auction place there. Because my business has failed, it was a retail business. They stole from us. It was a motor space. But I'm actually motivated by the auctions that are taking place, because I see that it's big cars, it's big trucks. So these people are probably successful people, and their businesses are going under, they are being auctioned. I pass Blue Valley and there's a sign that says this house is going on auction. And for me, that keeps me going. Because, you know, if you stay in Midrand, Blue Valley is the address. And the houses there are being auctioned. If you pass somewhere, there's auctions of bell trucks, and those things are expensive. So I assume whoever owned them was a top class businessman. And that keeps me going to say, look yourself, these people that are successful have also gone under. Businesses fail in the first 3 years, whatever that means. You have failed, she has failed, I have failed. But there's an issue of money, because when I stopped working, I was told the bills need to be paid, the kids need to go to school, and it's true. It has happened, and they need to be paid. So there's this issue of backup money, whatever. My wife is helping me, I must admit. And you were probably somebody else. So there's also the rule of money. But I'm just saying, maybe it's the psyche and whatnot. I will never look for a job. And I will always, because now I'm using my mind, because a friend of mine said, you are in space, you spend money. Use your brain, consult, and tell people, and you can make money. I'm an ethics officer, I'm a fraud analyst, and I can deal with those issues much better without spending money. And I speak for money. So I've changed the way I look at things to say, look here, you probably have lived long enough, like you say. When you're 26, people didn't know how to listen to you. But I've lived long enough to say, my knowledge that I've packaged, I make money out of it. And it's real because it helps people.
Yeah.
So just a comment.
Yeah, good for you.
Cool. Thank you for that. Last question, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Matt, if somebody comes to you who is struggling to answer their own or reach their own inner self, and they're coming to you as seeing you as someone who has lost, and you're making it again in whatever business. How do you inspire them? How do you motivate them? Where do they dig? How do you encourage them to dig into their inner self?
Yeah. I hate being called motivational. I can only motivate myself. I can't motivate you, I can't motivate anybody else. That's a choice you need to make. The difference is that, you know, what truly motivates you actually. You know, if you want to be uncommon amongst uncommon people, then who do you need to become in order to be or achieve that thing that you feel that you need? So motivation's an interesting one. Motivation comes and goes. I have some mornings this week, like 2 days ago, I didn't want to go to work. You know, but that's okay. You know, because no one's a machine. You know, but you have to figure out what motivates you. Truly, what motivates you. You know, and again, it's about taking a fearless moral inventory about who you are and what you're about and what you feel your limitations are. It's about standing in front of the accountability mirror and saying, I'm a fat fuck, and if I don't change my life, you know, then I'm going to die. So do I want that, or do I want to fundamentally change my life? And there's a great audiobook or book you can read. It's called You Can't Hurt Me by a guy called David Goggins. If you want to understand the idea of struggle, and I mean, like when I say it's mind-blowing seeing what this man has done. He's run like over 60 ultra marathons. He's run on broken legs, broken bones. He's done buds at the Navy SEALs 3 times. He did the Ranger School, which is like the baby school's Navy SEALs. He's done the Ranger School, where they put all military, all Air Force, all of the hardest men together to become Rangers. Done that twice. And so he talks a lot about this idea of struggle. And what motivates you should be the struggle, not the outcome. You know, it's like, if you want to be a doctor, well then why? Because that's a certain type of problem. Do you want to be a doctor because your parents said, you should be a doctor one day? Or maybe because your grandfather and your dad was a doctor, and so you should also be a doctor. That's just what our family does. But does that truly light you up and motivate you and fulfill you? Because it is truly about fulfillment. You know, and so I encourage people, and failing, going back to that thing again, you won't know unless you do something. You won't know. But most people don't take the first step. Like, the hardest day of your life is the day you decide to work for yourself. And then the day before you have a baby, or when your wife goes into labor. Like, those are the moments that define you. You know, and so, but it's like, there's many days in a life, but very few moments. You remember the day you got married, the day your kids were born, the day your dad died when you were very close to him or whatever. And that's all you remember. But you don't remember, the thousands of days that you were just like a real pussy and you didn't decide that you wanted something better for your life. You didn't see that. You just recognized, well, I'm broke. I've been broke my entire life, and that's just the way it always will be, right? So it's never going to change, isn't it? Right? So, it's all about these moments, and I don't think they come around very often. And it's about being self-aware and saying, actually, you know what? Today is the day I'm going to stop smoking. Today is the day I'm going to check myself into rehab because I'm a drug addict. Today is the day I'm going to do this. Today, not tomorrow. No excuse, no nothing. You need to figure out that is the thing that you're going to be about. The day you decide to write a book,
Cool. Matt, thank you so much. Can we have a big round of applause?